Gus T Renegade, the cows, hopefully here to share constructive information about racism and, most importantly, what to do to replace racism with justice immediately. Again, want to throw out just from the previous program, please, I do not want to waste time. We definitely want to solve problems as fast as possible. If you know a non-white person or a white person who can truthfully say that non-white people are not mistreated in my presence, stop listening to this program immediately and contact that person. See whatever you can do to work with that person, perhaps even stay with that person to make sure that you, if you are non-white, are not mistreated. We do not want to waste time. So if you know anybody, white or non-white, who can truthfully say that, contact that person immediately. In fact, in my show, we'll just go hang out with that person and see what they do so we can solve problems. But I don't think you're going to find a non-white person who qualifies, but I could be incorrect. For today's program, very pleased to have our guest with us today. I found out about our guest. He was in the news for the Thanksgiving holiday. He was giving a lecture or talk, and he spoke truthfully about how the so-called Native Americans had been mistreated, saying that they had been dehumanized and severely mistreated. I thought, hey, I'm all about having individuals who are willing to speak honestly about the ways that white people have been mistreated and experienced racism. Our guest for today's program, he is the founding director of the Reparations International Organization. He is Saturday afternoon with us. We are very grateful. Hopefully he can chat more, tell us more about this organization, what they do, and how they work against racism to establish justice. Our guest for today's program, Reverend Robert Chase. Reverend Chase, are you with us?
I sure am, Gus. Good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Could you share with our listeners who might not be familiar with Intersections, could you share with them, I guess, a little bit about yourself and a little bit about exactly what Intersections International is all about?
Sure. Let me do that and then specifically go to the event that you talked about that prompted you to be in touch with me to be on the show, and I really appreciate your invitation and hope that over the next couple hours we can have a really significant conversation. So I look forward to that. Intersections has been around for just over 2 years. We are a multi-faith, multicultural, permanent initiative of the Collegiate Church of New York. The Collegiate Church has been around since 1628. So the roots of the organization run deep, even though Intersections is only a little over 2 years old. Our mandate is specifically to bring people together who differ, to honor the differences, and then to forge common ground for justice, reconciliation, and peace. And so we have worked in the 2 years that we've been in existence in 3 major areas: in amplifying marginalized voices, where we relate to communities that have been marginalized by the dominant society. We've worked with the immigrant Muslim community in and around New York City, with the HIV/AIDS community, the gay and lesbian community, and as we can talk more later, with the Native American community, specifically in New York City. So that's one area that we do our work. The second area is in the arena of interfaith dialogue and cooperation. And we've spent much of the last 2 years working specifically around healing the rift between the Muslim and non-Muslim worlds. And that's been a major emphasis of the work that we've done, and we've done that work both locally and nationally and globally as well. And we could talk about that if you'd like as well. And then the third area is addressing the consequences of conflict. And in that area, we've done a lot of work looking at the non-monetary costs of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, specifically on the price that Muslims have paid in the media, the price in terms of credibility of the U.S. foreign policy, and then recently focused on two major communities that have suffered greatly from these ventures. One is the Iraqi refugee community, and we can talk about that, and the second one is the community of returning U.S. veterans. So in a nutshell, what we seek to do is bring together people who differ around a common table, and then hopefully by having multiple lenses on a particular problem, especially an intractable problem like racism or homophobia or classism or some of the barriers that are set up between people of differing faiths, that we seek to try to find innovative solutions to those problems. So that's, in a nutshell, what Intersections is all about.
Outstanding. I was taking notes feverishly as you spoke, so we can get more details about specific things. But I do want to point out, you were talking about you all address racism, homophobia, and classism. For my listeners, I do want to point this out because it's very important. And I think I've said this repeatedly on this program. When non-white people attempt to have discussions on racism, one thing you do have to look out for, it has been my experience, is that consistently other problems will be thrown in, and that will end up derailing the discussion on racism. Most consistently, I see homophobia and classism, or so-called capitalism. Those will be the two main ones that will be inserted that will end up moving the conversation away from racism. I've noted that consistently. I just want to point that out for the listeners. Sure.
And we can focus specifically on racism if you'd like. We can, but I don't disagree with your commentary there. Just was trying to explain to you some of the scope of the work of Intersections, which is very broadly based and doesn't focus exclusively on any one of those areas. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem in mentioning it either. I appreciate the getting accurate information about what it is you all do. That's something that's more so for my listeners, just so they know. I try to use this as an educational tool for listeners, non-white listeners, that is.
Right.
I wanted to point out for our listeners, you are a white male. Is that correct, Reverend Chase?
Yes, that's correct. I'm a straight white male, so have to come from that place of recognizing white privilege and try to add my perspective, but recognize the lens through which I address these topics is particular to who I am as a person and how God made me. So, but that's okay. That's acknowledging that, I think in some ways is an important first step in having genuine dialogue.
I agree wholeheartedly. I appreciate that comment as well, because we've had more callers. I've never had a guest, but individuals who call in to share their views, which I encourage. Feel free, if you're enjoying the dialogue, call in 347-215-6071. But they will say that it is irrelevant. My racial classification doesn't mean anything. That doesn't impact my views, and I could not disagree more. Knowing the individual, how they are classified, is very important if we're talking about racism, to know whether you're talking to a white person, non-white person. I think that's critical. I'm glad we have agreement on that.
Right.
I wanted to ask this program, the C.O.W.S, acronym, context of white supremacy. I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, and I have concluded that racism and white supremacy are one and the same. The definition that I use for racism and white supremacy is a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
I don't think it's an organized system as such. I think it's, if there is a system that you, in the way that you describe it, it's almost a system by default. I think one of the issues for white people is that, and it goes to what you indicated some of your callers had said, is that there is the tendency on the part of white folks to categorize themselves as non-racial, or as overlooking the privileges that white people have historically found or taken for granted, and so I think it's an insidious kind of paradigm that many fall into unwittingly. Obviously, there are those who manipulate it and who take advantage of the system deliberately. But I think there are many, many well-meaning white persons who are not aware of it, and I'm not holding them blameless on that. But I think that they participated in that kind of a default system in a sense unwittingly. And I think it's important to have conversations like this, so that people can have a rational, kind of thoughtful exchange around this issue, because it is really easy in U.S. society, at least, and in other societies as well around the country or around the world, to just put your head in the sand and not recognize that dynamic exists. So it's important to have these conversations. I think we need to be careful about the motivation that we ascribe to any broad group of people, and that would be the one caution that I would raise in terms of the definition that you shared a minute ago.
Okay. Just from your response, please correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you believe that there is a system of white supremacy. Is that accurate? Again, I don't think there is an organized system. I think that there are historical, cultural, and even religious, if you will, kind of dynamics that are at play with people that lead us to engage the other in certain ways. And sometimes, when it comes to the areas of race, that white folks, when they talk about that subject, which is a critical conversation in our society, and I'll pretty much, keep my references to our society, since I'm not an expert in European, African, Asian societies. But in our society, it seems to me that that it's an easy kind of default that white people fall into, overlooking privilege and the way society has been set up historically here in this country to exploit so-called race and to benefit certain races over others. I think that does happen, yes. Okay, so this default of white people being in control, dominating non-white people worldwide, is that accurate? Are we in agreement on that?
I think I think history would show that's the case. If you look at economics, if you look at the way the resources are distributed and shared, there is clearly a discrepancy between those people who are white and those people who are not. I think that's true. I think, I lament that, but I do think that that's true, yeah.
Okay. You said you are a white person. I am a non-white person. I guess, number one, most of the guests that I've had on this program have been white people. The vast majority of the white people who've been guests on this program have agreed that we are in a system of white supremacy, and that the definition that I've given for racism, white supremacy, that definition is accurate, that there is an organized system in place that is responsible for the default of white people being in charge of non-white people worldwide. I don't know, you saying that you don't think that there is an organized system in place that is responsible for that. I don't know. I suspect that you might not be being honest with me right now. I could be incorrect, but I am suspicious. You did say you're a white person. And I also want to point out, because you talked about motivation and it being a very dangerous thing to attribute motivation to people when you can't necessarily prove it. Do you think it would be a logical conclusion to decide that, hey, if the default, your term, the default is racism, white supremacy, white people dominating non-white people, if that is the default, do you think it would be logical to conclude that there are people who are white who intend for that to be the result?
I think that there are people who are white that intend for that to be the result, yes. I mean, okay. Absolutely. I think that, and I think that there are also many white people who, and I think this is where I was, what I was trying to say earlier, that there are many white people who don't take the time to consider their actions and their behavior and their decision-making, which perpetuates a dominance, if you will, on the part of white sectors of our society over non-white or persons of color. So I think that's true. I don't, however, believe that there is an organized system that does that. I believe, maybe I'm too much of a chaos theory believer, but most of the white people I know who are in charge aren't smart enough for that, to tell you the truth. I mean, most of the systems that I see that exist almost continue to run almost in spite of the people in charge. And so I think that this happens, but I think to say it's a global organized system implies to me, and I don't know, maybe you weren't implying this, but implies to me that there are conspirators who, some kind of net of conspirators that manipulate a global system that perpetuates this. I don't believe that, and I am being honest with you. I just think there are multiple systems in place, many of which perpetuate inequality. Inequality has been set up to benefit white people, and that's what I think is operative, not necessarily some global conspiracy on this. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm not being dishonest. That's what I believe. So,
okay. I want to point out for our listeners, Reverend Chase, and you can correct me if any of this information is not true. Reverend Chase, as I said, founding director of Intersections International. Reverend Chase has served as the director of communication for a 1.2 million member church. Director of communication for a 1.2 million member church. that sounds like someone who has refined skills at organization, and he is a white person. I find it very difficult to believe that most white people are not informed about this. And in fact, let me even hold up on that, because you used the term conspiracy, and that's, I think, one of those buzzwords, and I think people use that term for strategic reasons. If we just look at the definition, people talking about something, talking about information, a plan, organizing around doing something that is unbeknownst to other people, typically their victims. There's evidence that that happens all the time, where people organize, especially white people, organize to mistreat non-white people all the time. And I'm very certain you are aware of this. This happens worldwide all the time. Am I saying anything that's inaccurate?
No, I don't think you're saying anything that's inaccurate. That as far as it goes, what I was responding to was the impression, and again, this may have been just what I was hearing and maybe not what you intended, but the impression that all of those efforts are somehow interlocked, and so that there is a global network seeking to do that. That's the piece that I don't subscribe to. I think what happens is that, as you said, there are efforts that people in power, white people in power, seek to perpetuate their own power, their own privilege, their own economic well-being, what have you. And they do that in part through exploiting people of color. And so that I concur with you on that. And I think that happens a lot. And I think that in terms of what I was referring to before, I think there are people who participate in those kinds of systems that do so and really they do so unwittingly, or they do so without being aware of the implications of their actions. In large part because all of us are basically concerned about, the well-being of our family. Do I have a job? What's going on between here and my front porch, or in my case, since I don't have a front porch, the door of my condo unit. So I think that's where I guess where I would just disagree, because if in fact we're looking to find solutions for this, as I hear you saying that you are and what the show is dedicated to, then I think it becomes important for us not only to speak to people of color who have been abused by these systems, but also it's important to talk to white people who participate in these systems and who may not understand the implications of their actions, so that they might change. That's, I guess, where I'm going.
Is that work? Because I didn't hear that listed in the work that Intersections International does. I did not hear that listed, that you all make an effort to talk to non-white people or white people about racism, white supremacy specifically. Is that something you all do?
Yes. In fact, that's while that's not a major focus of, or maybe let me say it this way, it's not an explicit focus. There certainly are implications of that in what we do, in that we seek to bring together people who differ, and then to, in a sense, take them where they are and see if we can forge common ground for global social justice by bringing people out of the boxes in which they live and exist and believe, and the perspectives that they have, to try to find places where we might agree on how we can move forward together for a greater, better world. And we have done some explicit work on both anti-racism kind of behavior and on white privilege. So that we've done some specific work on that. But again, it is not the it's a part of what we do. It's not the totality of what we do.
What is the specific work that you've done around racism, white supremacy?
Well, let me start by talking about the event that prompted you to call me and invite me to participate in this conversation. Would that be a good place, a good example to use?
Sure. Let's hear it.
Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, the Collegiate Church was founded in 1628. And that means it was the church that was established here in New York City right after Henry Hudson landed here in New York, and then the Dutch West Indies Company established, in a sense, a company town in New Amsterdam at the time. And the Collegiate Church became the company church. We have Dutch roots, and we are the oldest surviving organization from New Amsterdam. So in 2009, the year just passed, there were several events across the city that celebrated or commemorated the Dutch arriving in 1609, because it was the 400th anniversary of Henry Hudson's landing. So we looked at that and felt that that this was unjust, that there were these commemorations of the Dutch heritage, but the Native American heritage was ignored, overlooked, and they were basically voiceless, despite the fact that what Henry Hudson began was a process that imposed an alien economic system, the kind of thing you were talking about before, a cultural system on the indigenous Lenape people who were here, the Native American folks who were here, and that imposition ultimately caused suffering, hardship, great suffering, hardship, dispersal, death, and a kind of cultural degradation and marginalization. So what we felt was that it was important for the Collegiate Church to own its history in this regard and to acknowledge its complicity in these historical actions. And so we put together a statement, part of which you quoted on your website, and I think was prompted you to give me the call to have this conversation. But basically, that statement acknowledged that we had been complicit in very destructive acts to Native American people who were here. We, the board of the Collegiate Church, approved this statement unanimously so that it became actually part of the official record of the Collegiate Church. And for your listeners, they can find this statement by going to two places. They can go to intersectionsinternational.org. That's all one word, intersectionsinternational.org. That's our website. And right on the home page, there's a little bit of text there, which and a button that will take you to the event of what we called cultural reconciliation that took place between the Collegiate Church and the Lenape people on the day after Thanksgiving, which had been proclaimed by President Obama in June as as Native American Heritage Day. And we had a public event acknowledging this this part of our history, and we did that in collaboration with the Lenape people, which was the tribe that was in and around New York City at that time. And it was a very moving moment and an opportunity for an expression of this. Of the kind of sins of the past, if you will, and a true acceptance and forgiveness that was expressed in their own words, by the Lenape people themselves. And as one of them, Carmen Ketcher from Oklahoma, said, but don't forget we're still here. And we're not the cartoons that are in the the funny papers or these caricatures that you see in some library books. But we're real people. We're progressive people. We're creative people. We're industrious people, and we're here to be dealt with. Just say one more thing on this. We were part of what we were very explicit about doing was not to create a kumbaya kind of moment, but rather so that then after this event took place in the public square, then we go about our business as if nothing had happened, but rather to mark a new day whereby members of the collegiate church and the Lenape people would work together to better the lives of the Native American community in New York City, which is the largest urban Native American population in the country, and also to find some specific ways of cooperating with the Lenape themselves, culturally, through the arts, through social service systems, and other ways, so that we might move forward in a new kind of partnership. So that's an example, rather than being just platitudes about how we ought to relate to people across lines of race and culture, but really a way of an actual concrete event that has given rise to multiple ways of cooperating since then, and with great plans looking to the future.
The ways of cooperating in the future, things you all are looking to do on the horizon, how does that solve the problems of the Lenape people? Am I saying their name correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. How does that solve the problems the Lenape people, non-white people, how does that solve the problems they face or improve their quality of life, what you all are looking to do?
Okay, well, I very much doubt that the collegiate church is a church of about 4,000 people altogether. We have 4 congregations plus intersections. And we have some resources, but in the grand scheme of things, limited resources. So I doubt we're going to solve the problems, but we are seeking to address them. The question you asked is how. Let me give you a couple of specific, one general, and then a couple of specific illustrations. One of the things that we're really looking to do is increase or amplify the voice of this large Native American community, and this goes beyond the Lenape, but the Native American community that's currently in New York City. About 90,000 folks, according to the census data, so there's probably more than that. But who are largely voiceless in their relating to the city and to those structures of power that exist both economically and politically. And what we seek to do is be able to harness the leadership from that community and work with them as they identify their hopes and aspirations to find ways for them to have a greater voice in the city itself. Specifically, so that's a general kind of thing. Then specifically, there's a Native American Children's Museum that is soon to reopen. Actually, technically, it had been open, but done some very negative stereotyping kinds of things for children throughout the city, non-native children, where they would come, school children, for example, from across New York City would come and learn about the native culture, but it was not culturally precise and stereotypical. That organization is now reopening with some informed and accurate depictions of Native American culture, religion, and life in this city and in this country. And we're working with them. We have a member of Intersection staff is on their board, and we're working in partnership with them to spread the word about that organization. There is an effort to increase broadband capability on the reservations. This goes beyond New York City because there are no reservations in New York City, but something that Native Americans are within the city are really concerned about, and we're working with some folks there to find the way. As you said earlier, I was the director of communication for the United Church of Christ, and I've had a lot of dealing with the Federal Communications Commission and done some work in the telecom arena and the internet. So we're looking to get broadband capability for Native American folks on reservations around the country by identifying stimulus money and trying to work with the FCC and other governmental agencies to do that. And we're working cooperatively with, at the request of, and cooperatively with some of the local Native American leaders. We have a program in the arts where we see the arts as a way to cultural empowerment, and we already have a program planned for next Saturday night that will include a Native American artist among the 4 artists that will be performing as a way of showing a multicultural audience the richness of their particular heritage. We're working with a social service agency to try to get social services that Native American people are entitled to have those delivered. There's a disconnect in terms of delivery systems with the city and the state in terms of delivering some of those systems, some of those services to Native Americans in need in the city, and we're working with a Native American social service agency to help make that happen. There are other ways as well, but those are just some that are already underway, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to move from an event to an ongoing working relationship.
Founding Director of Intersections International, Reverend Robert Chase. 803, I just saw you called in. If you got disconnected, just call us back. I'll make sure you are able to ask Reverend Chase your question, 803, or anyone else if you have questions, 347-215-6071. Reverend Chase, I wanted to point out, said your congregation that you're working with right now, Intersections International, part of the Collegiate Church in New York. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And you said that your congregation has about 4,000 people.
Yes.
That is a significant number of people, in my view, and I could be incorrect. But 4,000 folks, particularly if there are 4,000 folks who are organized around getting certain things done, they could do a lot. The things that you mentioned, particularly the getting broadband for the Lenape and other Native Americans, non-white people, and making sure that they receive benefits from social services that they're not getting. I think that's excellent. That is directly improving the quality of life for non-white people and solving their problems. That seems like something you all should be able to knock out easy. Like you said, you former director of communications, you've had contact with the FCC. That seems like something you all could really make a lot of progress and really have a big impact on the lives of non-white people. Broadband, broadband internet, you can communicate, you can perhaps look employment. You could do a lot getting internet access for these non-white people. With 4,000 people, if everybody even gave $1, we could make a $4,000 contribution just with $1. Everybody get. Is that funny? Am I being foolish? If everybody
No. Gus, we're hopeful. We're hopeful. Let me explain the collegiate system a little bit. We have actually in the Collegiate Church of New York, which, as I said, dates back to 1628. There are currently 4 congregations, 4 individual congregations, and their total membership is around 4,000, plus intersections, which, as I said at the top of the show, is explicitly multiracial, multicultural, and multi-faith in its expression. So we don't have a congregation as such. We work in the social justice arena on behalf of the collegiate church and along with the congregations who also work in the social justice arena. We have a church in the East Village, one in Midtown, one on the Upper West Side, and then one up in Washington Heights, up in northern Manhattan. They're all on Manhattan Island. And the problem that you suggest about broadband, for example, and we talk about doing that nationally, is a problem, the solution of which would require millions of dollars. And what we're trying to do is leverage the good name of the collegiate church and the leadership of the Lenape and other Native Americans with the FCC and those regulatory bodies that determine how much money can be spent for broadband capabilities, and that's what we're trying to do. So it's not that we would pay for that ourselves; we could never afford that. But what we hope to do is in a sense, to throw the old pipe in the lead pipe in the tank treads of the systems that you talked about early in the show, so that these systems that determine where the stimulus money will go and where broadband access will be paid for by the federal government will include, as it now does not, as I understand, the people who live on reservations, the Native American population. And so many in the Native American population do live on reservations. So that's what we're trying to do. And, you know, I appreciate your good words, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to make a difference so that life, in fact, will be different for this particular group of people who have been so abused by the governmental systems and the economic systems in this country.
I do, second time, I want to highlight and point out, Reverend Chase, you said that the systems that I referenced, Gus T Renegade has not referenced any systems. Gus T Renegade has referenced consistently the system of racism, white supremacy. I don't think I have alluded to any other system nationally, locally, globally. I believe there is a dominant system of racism, white supremacy, which smothers everything and is the most important system to look at, in my view. And I could be incorrect. But
yes, I stand corrected. You did say that. Systems was my term, not yours. So apologize for that.
No problem.
And we'll. But that's what we're trying to be about. So trying to make a difference.
No problem. I just, like I said, I wanted to point that out because I have seen this happen with other white people that I've had conversations about racism, white supremacy, where they will shy away from using the term system of racism, white supremacy, and they will just say system or systems. They'll do a lot of things to work away from using that term. I'm just pointing this out for the non-white people. That's something you need to be aware of so that your words don't get changed because I didn't say systems. I've just been saying system of white supremacy as I always do. The other thing, I guess let me ask first, the collegiate church, the 4 congregations that are around 4,000 in their membership, these congregations, are they mostly white?
Probably the majority of people are white, I would think, but each of them actually, in their own way, are multicultural and multiracial. So diversity is a hallmark of the collegiate church congregations, and part of the reason that I'm working there, frankly, because I wouldn't want it to be otherwise. So it's interesting that you mentioned this. In the current issue of Time magazine, there is a rather extensive article about evangelical churches kind of leading the way in the 11 o'clock, the phrase that Martin Luther King used about 11 o'clock being the most segregated hour in America. It's an interesting article, and this is not to detract from any of the good work that any of those churches are doing, but I've been involved with progressive churches for 30 years that have been multicultural in their multiracial in their makeup, and while I recognize and lament the fact that most of our churches are homogeneous in their racial makeup, I do know that there are examples, really kind of shining examples, where that's not the case. So I just as an aside, too, in terms of, and the collegiate churches have, at least over the past 2 decades, have been churches that have been very explicit about their openness to people across racial, cultural, and lines of sexual orientation as well. So.
Okay. I want to hop back to the broadband and social services with what you just said, because and I could be incorrect, but I have not observed where so-called multicultural, so-called multiracial, or diverse settings where you have different people together, specifically white and non-white. I have not observed how that directly or indirectly replaces white supremacy with justice. I have not observed how that directly or indirectly improves the quality of life for non-white people or solves those non-white people's problems. I have not seen that. Specifically with the broadband and social services, if there are around 4,000 mostly white people in the greater New York area who are part of the collegiate church in New York, I would think if you got that many white people, you can just leverage the status of those white people to make a lot of noise to say, hey, we are about replacing white supremacy with justice. We are about treating people correctly, acknowledging injustices that happen. We are about establishing a system of justice. Whoever we need to talk to get the FCC rolling, whatever the money is, this is compensation. Really, these people are owed this anyway. This should have been done a long time ago. Maybe with what's happened, they should have been the first people to get broadband because of the mistreatment and abuse that they have suffered. I just don't look at 4,000 white people as something, to ignore. I have seen fewer white people cause a lot of problems and, conversely, do a lot of constructive things just because they were organized, dedicated to solving problems or getting things done. If you got 4,000 mostly white people, I think you all could get a lot done in terms of solving problems for the Lenape people, non-white people in general specifically, or I will say especially, if you all made an effort to specifically focus on replacing racism with justice, because you said that's not one of your explicit goals. It's certainly not one of the ones that you listed. You said it's implied, and I think that the dominating factor that racism, white supremacy has worldwide, I think that should be an explicit goal of anyone or any organization that alleges to be about justice, establishing justice, and making sure that people are not mistreated. In fact, any organization that says or alleges to be about establishing justice and working to see that people are not being mistreated, and they don't explicitly talk about racism, white supremacy, and have that as one, if not the dominant thing that they're focused on, I strongly suspect that group is practicing racism. They're not really interested in establishing justice, because the things that you listed, even the so-called Muslim problem, I see a lot of racism in that. I see that as just another means of calling out non-white people, mistreating non-white people. I've seen that repeatedly. Looking at some of the other things that you mentioned, the classism. People in the lower class, non-white people. I know there are some white people who get mistreated as well, but I would, in my view, I would say that white people constitute a class to themselves in the system of white supremacy. And just getting people to define what they mean when they say class, no one has ever been able to tell me that that's incorrect. Yeah, I'm just looking over the notes here from the things that you said that are an explicit focus of Intersections International. And, yeah, that's just my view. I could be incorrect. I want to give you opportunity to hear what you have to say, and then you have some folks that called in as well. But what's your view on that?
Sure. Well, I think that to ignore race in this equation is inappropriate and inaccurate. And so while you stated that replacing white supremacy, your term, with justice was not explicit in the mandate of Intersections, the notion of coming to understand the other, whomever that might be, if that's a Muslim or if that's a Jew or if that's a Republican or if that's a black person or a Native American person or a homeless person, coming to understand the other as not alien to oneself is the goal of Intersections. And so we can't ignore the racial component in this. Race is part of the fabric of our society, and so the tapestry of how we do our work includes race, as you said, in the way we relate to trying to heal the rift between the Muslim and non-Muslim worlds. There's a racial component in that. There's certainly a racial component in the way people continue to be profiled at airports and that kind of thing. So we're we're about that.
About what specifically?
We're about trying to create a network in which or a framework in which the otherness of people who are different from let me speak personally, the otherness of people who are different from me, whether they're a woman, whether they're a young person, whether they're black, whether they're Native American, whether they're homeless, whether they're so as that evaporates and I begin to see the commonality between myself and them, then I can't demonize them. Then I can't put them into let's say for a second the system that you said exists globally. Then I can't put people into that system because they're me. They're part of me. They're like me. So the whole supremacist notion loses its power because I am not privileged over other people. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate those perspectives of otherness. That may sound like highfalutin words, but then we've done it in really concrete ways, like the way that I explained earlier, or we've created a play called Being Muslim in America. It's called Under the Veil, Being Muslim in America Since 9/11, and we've created a play that has been performed at various places around in New York City and in Washington D.C. And that again gets to the question of or dialogue after the play of what's my commonality with my Muslim brothers and sisters, and how are some of the stereotypes that are perpetrated by the media and others, how are they inaccurate? And one of the ways, you talked earlier about my role as communication director and working with the FCC and that kind of thing. And just to clarify for your audience's understanding, I was the communication director for the denomination, the United Church of Christ, which has about 5,700 congregations and 1.2 million members. So it wasn't one single congregation with that, there's one single huge congregation. But I was the communication director for the national offices of the United Church of Christ. But in doing my communication work, for example, there's about a third, as you know, about a third of the U.S. population is people of color, but they only own about 3% of the TV stations and about 2% of the media assets in this country. So if one of the ways, and your being a person of color who's a broadcaster can understand this, that one of the ways that we've got to try and change the way different sectors of our society relate to one another is to try to work for media ownership and media participation on the part of people of color, because they're the ones who are in a position to tell the stories, especially in terms of media ownership. So, African American stations in this country only reach 8% of the African American population in this country, because they're located in a few large metropolitan areas, and of course that people in the rural South, for example, aren't exposed to TV stations that are owned by African Americans because they don't exist. So one of the concrete ways to improve the lives of folks is to change the stories that people tell about one another. We've created a website called changethestory.net, which deals primarily with healing the rift between the Muslim community and shattering the stereotypes that have been perpetrated about the Muslim community in recent months and years. And but it's how we change the story about Native Americans, about Muslims, about African Americans, about Hispanics. As we do that, then the quality of the other, as I said earlier, disappears, and we're able to be more unified. And I do think, frankly, and I believe this very strongly, that is a way towards minimizing, eliminating is a big word, but that is a way towards making the shift from a culture or a system that favors one so-called race, and even race is an artificial term, as you know, one so-called race over others. If we can work together to minimize that otherness.
Okay. Again, Reverend Robert Chase, founding director of Intersections International, and the website is linked in the description for the program, intersectionsinternational.org, all one word, intersectionsinternational.org. The concept of otherness, I've heard white people talk about that, and that if we get together and see that we don't have so many differences after all, we have a lot in common, we will not mistreat one another. I have seen a lot of efforts down that road where white people have done things, organized with non-white people, sung in the choir together, done plays together, that sort of thing, and I have seen no evidence that results in non-white people not being mistreated because they are not white. I have seen no evidence that these efforts of understanding the other result in racism, white supremacy being replaced with justice. I've seen no effort at all. All I've seen is non-white people and white people together talking about race or talking about each other or talking about their lives or whatever they're talking about. And the system of racism, white supremacy continues to roll on. So I am very incredulous of that claim that works against racism. I have participated even in some of that stuff, and I continue to be mistreated because I'm not white. So I don't see any evidence of that. I would highly encourage, particularly if you, former director of communications for the United Church of Christ, with 1.2 million members, I'm pretty certain, as other white people who've been guests on this program have said, white people have extraordinary access to resources, one of them being other white people. You could probably you probably have the access to get a lot of white people involved in solving problems for non-white people, whether it's Lenape people, other non-whites who have a myriad of problems. It sounds like you have an extraordinary amount of access to white people and could do a lot of work. And I think it would be much more effective not focusing on understanding the other, but making sure our principal concern is making sure people are not being mistreated. We're improving the quality of life of non-white people and or solving their problems, which would be included inherently in improving their quality of life, I think. I could be incorrect. I do want to get some callers and also hear your response, but some of these folks have been hanging for a while. 803, if you are there with a question for Reverend Robert Chase, you are on live.
Yes, how are you doing, Gus? This is Thomas.
Yes, sir. I'm well. Thank you for calling in.
Happy New Year, and thank you to the Reverend for taking his time. I've always wondered this question. I don't want to veer off course, so just kind of keep me in place, Gus. Here, I have a question. I mean, you talked about your foundation and its principles, and let me ask something just from the context of you being a white male in the society. I think you've acknowledged there are certain things that there are inherent inequities in the society. With that being the case, how do you feel about, for instance, when the Jews were given money for the Holocaust, or when Native Americans were given land, they're given certain reservations and certain monies in order to further their cause to be more self-determined as a people, or they'll have, say for instance, the Jewish Holocaust Museum. How do you feel about that in the terms of compensation for past wrongs?
I think that the question of reparations is, of course, is something that's very very complex. It's something that who gets paid how much for what, when, and where. So it's something I think something like the Holocaust Museum. Or the museum in Atlanta that the King Center. I think some of those places that seek to keep us, the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam. Some of those places that serve as a reminder.
Japan.
I'm sorry.
Or Japan, after they were bombed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the money that was given to them. I guess, and it's funny that you went to reparations. I didn't mention anything about reparations. I just want to know what your thought process and feeling was on the 2 or 4 mentioned topics. So maybe because I didn't really want to get into that, but I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on, because I didn't even mention the word reparations. I just want to know what your thoughts were, for instance, on how other people have been compensated for their loss of life, blood, treasure, economic oppression. I just want to know your thoughts on that. I didn't really want to get into the reparations document.
Well, I think that is reparations. I mean, that's by definition, that's what it is.
Well, not in the context of those of black, people who are black. I didn't want to get into that. I just thought your thoughts on others being compensated for it.
Well, I think if there are ways that people can be compensated for past wrongs, I think that's appropriate. I think I think what's more important is how we work together moving forward from here. But I think that people can be compensated for past wrongs. I think that's been true in a recent case that's been decided for Native Americans. It was certainly true with the Japanese. But you know that never really compensates. I mean, you can't pay Native Americans what's been taken from them. Or African Americans, what's been taken from them, or the Japanese in a more focused way. What's been taken from them. You can't really repay that. So part of what you need to do is not just focus on that kind of compensation, but be intentional about forging new ways of cooperating together, as Gus said earlier, to enhance the standard of living, to make sure that people's basic needs are met, that communities aren't marginalized, and that kind of thing. So that comes from moving forward in a new way, not just looking to the past. So that would be my response to that.
619, you are on live. The chat room is now open. Feel free to, all you should have to do is refresh the page if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio. Just refresh, and the chat room should be there, 619.
Good afternoon, Mr. Renegade, and good afternoon, Reverend Chase.
Hi.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I am reading the promo for the show, in which an excerpt is taken from Intersections International's website that reads in part that the mission of the organization is to forge common ground and develop strategies that promote justice. I have a suggestion on how that might be done. I, as a person who is not white, have some anxiety about an effort by a non-white person whose name is Gus T Renegade that has been helping numerous people who are not white understand the system that is mistreating them on the basis of color, is going to cease to exist in August of this year, because, I don't know if you're aware of this, Reverend Chase, this show is being done by Mr. Renegade on a borrowed phone and a borrowed computer. His show is the #1 rated educational program on this venue, Blog Talk Radio, and yet, despite repeated attempts of requesting that he be given an adequate computer for a show of such constructive value, and he won't need a phone if he gets a computer that is adequate for his needs on this program, it has netted nothing. And since I've seen it or listened that your organization has sought to help people who are not white get technological help in terms of computer access, broadband access, it seems that it would be probably a fairly simple thing, not to give him money, but to give him something that money would buy. He has requested a MacBook Pro, which is necessary for his program, and it's going to go out of existence, and we'll be left hanging here, including me, if it does go out of existence in August of 2010. Sir, could you, and just a few of the white persons you know who have either the resources personally or certainly have access to persons who do have those resources, provide Mr. Renegade with the computer that he needs so that the program will not go out of existence, that you are now on, but will go out of existence in August of this year if he doesn't get it. Could you do that?
Well, Gus, I would certainly be open to having that conversation, because I think your perspective is one that needs to be heard and considered and be part of the mix. Obviously, I wasn't aware of this, and I would certainly be open to having that conversation. We could do that via email sometime starting tomorrow or starting on Monday when I'll be back in the office. So I'd be happy to talk about how that might come to pass.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you, 619.
Hey, Gus, I'm curious. I have a question about something that before when you were mentioning, unless there are other callers in the queue there, but when you were mentioning before that you didn't feel that that some of these multicultural ways of addressing change for communities of color were working. I'd be curious to know, from your experience, what does work?
Well, we're still in a system of racism, white supremacy, so I would say, logically speaking, none of the efforts to replace white supremacy with justice have been adequate thus far. In my view, I am a victim of racism, white supremacy, and have been for the duration of my existence on this planet. So thus far, nothing has proved adequate. I certainly wouldn't say that, that means everything that people have done to attempt to counter racism, white supremacy has been worthless, but it certainly, thus far, those efforts have proved to be inadequate. And as I said, with the whole concept of the other, I even have a blog post about that. I don't think that term even works against racism, white supremacy, because we're not speaking accurately about whoever it is the other is supposed to be. I just have not seen where that improves the quality of life for non-white people or solves their problems. People just talk about differences and commonalities and blah, 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 and have some food from different places of the world, and then we go right on in the system of racism, white supremacy. That has been my experience.
So what would you then counsel as that I can do? What's the message that I can then take back to my colleagues at the Collegiate Church and the 4,000 members that are there? What is what's the message that I take from this experience that will help change this dynamic that's operative? You say globally, and I yield to your wisdom on that, but I know that it exists in various, as I say it, systems in this country. So what can I tell them? Is there hope? Where's the hope? What can they do?
I definitely believe there's hope, even though I don't use that word too often. I believe this problem can be solved. I think that was a big point that was brought up on the previous program. When people don't believe that a problem can be solved, they are much less likely to attempt to solve the problem. So I definitely believe the problem can be solved. I would not be investing my time and energy speaking with you this afternoon if I didn't think this could be fixed. I would say, are you talking to white people, mostly white people? Are you talking to non-white people?
Like I said, figure our congregation is about maybe 55% white. There are a lot of people of color in the congregation, and they're not all African-American people. There are a lot of Hispanic people, especially in one of our congregations. There are a lot of there are Asian people. There are mixed-race people. So there are a lot of people of color that are part of the congregations. As I said before, it's a diverse group, but it's a group that is concerned about social justice. So my question again is, what's the message that I can bring to them? How can I tell them, something positive about? I agree with you that unless we think the problem, can be solved, we're not going to really work at solving it. And I really applaud you for. When you contacted me, your comment that really struck me was that you sought to have, and I think the phrase that you used was a thoughtful and respectful dialogue about replacing white supremacy with justice, and that's what we've had, and I appreciate that a lot. And so I think that's one thing that we can do. I think that's one thing we can do, what you're doing. But I guess what I want to say is, which is why I would like to have the conversation that was prompted by the previous caller about making sure that this kind of thoughtful, respectful dialogue continues. But what do I tell my folks that in terms of what they can do to change the world.
Okay. I've jotted down bullets of things you can say.
Terrific.
Information that I think would be constructive, and I could be incorrect, so I guess that would be number one. This information or these are just suggestions.
Okay.
Think about them if you do use them. These are just suggestions. Think about them. If you don't think that they make sense or you don't see how they would improve your quality of life or be helpful for you, disregard them immediately. That would be number one. I think, number one, you as a white person, talking about racism, white supremacy, since you are a white person, that would be a big help, because it has been my experience when white people initiate the discussion and speak honestly about racism, white supremacy, that makes non-white people a lot more comfortable talking about racism, white supremacy. It's been my experience that a lot of non-white people get nervous. They feel uncomfortable talking about racism, particularly in front of white people. They feel like it's going to upset the white people. It's blaming white people. Just non-white people have been thoroughly conditioned to not upset white people. And talking about racism, white supremacy is one of the big ways you can upset a white person if you are non-white. So I think, number one, speaking honestly, hey, this is Reverend Robert Chase. I am a white person, and we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. That, number one, I think that opens the door for a lot of dialogue and honest conversation about what that means if you're a white person, what that means if you're a non-white person. I think, number two, saying, hey, if we say we are about establishing justice, we say we are about people making sure that people are not being mistreated, we really have got to focus our explicit attention on racism, white supremacy. We cannot hide from this, and we got to be honest. If we got this many white people here, we probably have quite a few white people who are racist right here. That's just got to be true if we're in a system of racism. So we need to be very honest about that, and even if that means pointing out how we could be practicing racism, white supremacy, and I suspect you all probably are if you have that many white people there. Just the logic of being in a system of white supremacy, that is most likely true. I would say for the non-white people, definitely letting them know you should be suspicious of every white person as long as we're in a system of white supremacy and the logic behind that. This system has been running for a very long time, and white people have shown they can be married to non-white people and still practice racism. They can be friendly and nice with non-white people and still practice racism. White people have shown the ability to deceive non-white people worldwide, and that coming from a white person would have a huge impact on those non-white people, especially. Even you telling them that, even me, even Reverend Robert Chase, whatever you think about me and the work that I've done, you should still be suspicious of me because I am a white person and I might even be practicing racism subconsciously. That could be true. You should think about that. You should keep that in mind as long as the system of racism exists. And I think telling the non-white people and the white people, anytime you hear individuals talking about addressing racism and addressing the other, the criterion for evaluating their work should be, is this solving problems for non-white people and or improving their quality of life? It's been my experience that non-white people generally do not have a criterion for judging, evaluating the work that is being done to work against racism. And as the result of that is you don't really have a gauge on whether what you're doing is producing an effective result. So I think that is the best gauge in the world. Let me look at my situation comparing Sunday to Monday. Have things gotten better for me? If I didn't have a house on Sunday, do I have a house on Monday? If I didn't have broadband on Sunday, do I have it by Monday? But, whatever problems I'm having, whatever my quality of life is that improving for me as we continue to do this work? That is an easy way of evaluating the progress, and I think more non-white people should think in that manner. And that way they could give you honest feedback. Hey, this understanding the other thing, this is not solving my problem. I'm still being mistreated. We need to do something else. Let's get that broadband. Let's put more energy into getting that broadband. I can pay. We have internet access. I can listen to Gus's show. I could tune in and hear more dialogue about racism. Or let's get those social services benefits. Let's put more energy into that. Go ahead, sir.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, and I was taking notes while you were talking, and those were helpful points. They really were. I guess what I want to just respond in two ways. One, I absolutely agree, and I am always suspicious of, and I know that you would agree with this, but again, now you're hearing it from a white person, that when somebody begins a conversation, well, I'm not a racist, but, or whatever, that's of course the first flag to go up. So
wait a minute. You said that you feel that way when you talk to a white person and they say, I'm not a racist. A flag goes up for you.
That's right. So,
why is that?
Why is that? Because methinks thou protestest too much, John Alden was but
wow.
But what I wanted to be clear in terms of what I want to be about is to acknowledge what you said. I think you made a really important point, that there are ways that are ingrained in me where I am racist without even necessarily owning that racism. So you haven't heard me in the however 90 minutes that we've been talking in any way claim not to be racist, because that's not accurate, and that's not what I believe about myself. I try to own that. I try to acknowledge that lens, as I said earlier, in bringing that to the table. So I want to be engaged in the conversation about white privilege or white supremacy. It's curious. I said I was in a panel discussion for Unity journalists, journalists of color. This was a couple of years ago on white privilege, and I made the comment at that panel discussion that white privilege, the word privilege, is a kind of a soft term, and that if you change that term from white privilege to white supremacy, that there would be a whole different cast shed on the conversation. The panel was called White Privilege in the age of the media or something like that. And so what you're doing is you're removing that term privilege and you're replacing it with the term supremacy. And I think that challenge that's implicit in that terminology is an important lens for me as a white person to hear. And I guess what I'm saying back to you is that I'm working at continually trying to own my own prejudices, racism and prejudices against other aspects of life or against the other as I am about my works. And so your point, I think, is really important for white people to acknowledge that. Second thing I wanted to say, which is very different than that, is to say that the work that we are doing in the event that we did on the day after Thanksgiving, I think is an example of that, is concrete in its outcomes, in its desired outcomes, so that we're not looking to have dialogue for the sake of dialogue. We're not looking to have a meal together across cultural lines so that we can taste good food. We're not looking to do those kinds of social niceties as an end in the process of what we're about, but rather what we're about is to seek to claim the dignity of human life in all its forms, and that cuts across race, culture, class, gender, sexual orientation, and that's what we're about. So explicitly, specifically, the broadband project that we're working on, or explicitly the website that we've been working on to seek to change stereotypes. We had somebody come up to us and say that she was in an interracial and cross-cultural and interfaith relationship. She was married to an African, she's French-Canadian, married to an African Muslim. And she and her family was rejecting her husband and was saying all kinds of things about him. And she asked them to go to our website, changethestory.net, and to learn about how they were stereotyping this man that was her husband. They did that. They changed their views to him, actually apologized to him, and as she says, and she's told this story a number of times, he is now their favorite in-law. So that's an example, a concrete example of how the work that we're doing seeks to change the quality of life of people who are considered the other. And often, as you indicate correctly, the other has a racial component to it.
Okay. I had another suggestion, and I definitely got to make sure I point this out. I have seen a plethora of evidence that the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner ending, where the white parents and or the non-white parents are now okay with their offspring marrying someone who is of a different race, be it a white person marrying a non-white person or vice versa. I have seen repeatedly where even though there has been a change with that specific individual, I'm just going to talk about white people, even though the white people are no longer mean and mistreating their in-law, their son-in-law or daughter-in-law who is not white, they still practice racism. They still go to work and do things in all other areas of activity where they practice racism. So I would not view that as a concrete change, even though it has probably made the quality of life of that particular non-white person better, the African male that you're talking about. It's probably made things better for him in his family life and being able to go to family functions. But I strongly suspect that those white people, if they were being racist towards their son-in-law, I strongly suspect that their attitudes about non-white people have not changed wholeheartedly, and I strongly suspect that they're still practicing racism, white supremacy in all other areas of their life. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I have no way of knowing that, first of all. But second of all, you spoke before about not feeling that this is an unsolvable problem, and I believe that if individual people are going to change, they got to start somewhere. And so you may be absolutely right that those people may be racist, in their dealings in business or whatever. I don't know them, to tell you the truth, so I don't even want to make that accusation. But you may be right. But they got to start somewhere. Each of us has to start somewhere. And so if we're really going to change, we got to start somewhere. So what I was trying to indicate to you was a concrete manifestation of how, yes, this one individual, not the whole system, not the global, kind of way that we relate one to another, but this one individual used very concretely work that we did, and his life and his wife's life were better because, and the family's life was better because of it. Now, does that mean that all of their economic and political relationships and stereotyping is over and done with? No. But it may give them, all of those people involved, just one little glimmer of how life can be better, and that's what we're trying to be about.
Valid. I do want to take a call, but I do want to respond. It may sound as though that's snatching hope from people or people who are feeling good about the work that they do and saying, no, you shouldn't feel good about that. That's, these people could still be practicing racism. This is honest feedback from a victim of white supremacy. It is my view that particular example, I do not count that as a concrete example of the quality of life or problems being solved for a non-white person. I view that, yes, things may be better, that non-white person might be better, that he's not being mistreated on a consistent basis. However, if these white people are continuing to practice racism in all other aspects of their life, for me, I would prefer that they remain racist to him so that he has a very clear idea of the world in which he lives and how white people, many white people, feel about non-white people. I think that would be much more helpful, because a lot of non-white people are very confused about this, and when you have a non-white person in a sexual relationship with a white person and they're acting like this is cool, in fact, this is one of the big ways that I see racism practiced currently, where white people and non-white people will point to sexual relationships between a white person and a non-white person and say, see, things are working out. Things are getting better. See, we're recognizing the commonalities. We don't have a problem being married. And I'm saying absolutely not. Non-white people and white people have been in sexual relationships for eons, and it has not solved racism, white supremacy. As I said earlier, white people have consistently shown the ability to have sexual relationships with non-white people, have non-white people in their family, and still practice racism. That is huge. That's why I had to say that. That, to me, does not count as a concrete example of effective work against racism, white supremacy at all. I have seen way too many examples of that thing happening, these relationships having a non-white person in the family, and it does nothing to change racism, white supremacy at all. And as I said, non-white people tend to get very confused about that when they see these examples and think that things are better, there is an improvement of some sort, and I have not seen any evidence that that is true. I want to get one call in because he's been hanging, and then you can make sure you respond. Don't lose your thought on that. 111. That's what your line is showing as 111. You have a question for Reverend Robert Chase.
Hotep victim.
Greetings. Glad you could call in, sir.
I do have a question for Reverend Chase. I would like to know, to use your words, as you said, to help non-white people have a little glimmer that life can be better. Is that what you said, sir?
I think that's what both Gus and I are trying to do. Yeah.
But I think those were your words.
Sure.
You can really give that little glimmer that life can be better if you would not confuse us, or particularly me. I have asked a few times the same question that the caller 619 asked you in terms of assisting the victim, the host of this show, in getting a computer, specifically a MacBook Pro, I believe. I am confused with your response. I have consistently heard white people give answers that are absolutely confusing. We can have a conversation. That means nothing, and I am not trying to be, discourteous. I am simply being very honest with you, sir. This show is a glimmer of hope for myself, and I suspect every other non-white person that listens to this show. It is more a glimmer than you can possibly imagine, I suspect. With what you said, I will go off of this program wondering, is he really going to help the victim or is he not? What exactly is he going to do? There was nothing in your words that gave me any commitment whatsoever as you committed to what you did on Thanksgiving Day for the Native people. That was a commitment. So I'm asking you, sir, can you commit at this moment right now, make an actual positive commitment to assisting or either using your congregation in some way to make a commitment right now to actually get that MacBook Pro for the victim, the host of this show? Can you say yes, that you will do that? And further, let him know a specific amount. Let him know a specific time that you will do, not just say or have a conversation, that you will do something in terms of getting him that computer. Do as you did with what you did on Thanksgiving for the Native peoples. Don't tell us.
Okay, let me respond to that. I think that, with respect, be careful about speaking about my motivation, because you don't know me and you don't have any idea what's behind my motivation. Secondly, I would say that, frankly, I think it's inappropriate, and Gus, I would think that you would share this, to be invited onto a program as a guest and then be asked to make a commitment to make a gift. I just don't think that's appropriate. Third, in terms of your reference to what we did on the day after Thanksgiving, there was a whole process. There was a process. It took 2 years of building trust between the Collegiate Church and the Lenape people. 2 years of building trust before we could go public and make a kind of a statement of acknowledgement and forgiveness in a public arena. I'm in a public arena right now. Anybody can tune into this show. And frankly, we don't have that 2-year trust-building relationship. I commend Gus for what he's trying to do. And I think this has been a thoughtful and respectful conversation, and I applaud that. And I hope that that can continue. But I didn't know until an hour into our conversation that that need existed. And for me to make a public commitment in a public forum at this moment, before I did due diligence in terms of finding out more about what Gus's needs are and what how I might best help him, that would be irresponsible. And I won't do that until I'm not saying we have to wait 2 years, because I hear that there's a timeline on this. I respect that too, but to assume that I would just commit to that kind of a gift, really, in the context of being invited as a guest on this show, I think is inappropriate. With respect.
With respect, sir, you have said that white people have taken land and wealth and all kinds of things in so many words from the Native peoples. And with respect, sir, you said it should be given back in some way, reparations, with respect. Also, sir, as regards, wait, I didn't enter, hold on, I didn't interrupt you, let me finish. With regards to your motivation, you agreed that all non-white people should be suspicious of all white people, considering what they have done historically and what they continue to do in terms of the system of white supremacy. We should be suspicious of your motives, sir, and your motivation. Thirdly, as far as it being inappropriate, what white people have done and continue to do in terms of the injustices and the mistreatment that they continue to shove down the throats of non-white people, it's been inappropriate. Oh, there are no words for it, how inappropriate it is. So if we are about the business of getting justice done, then I think it's absolutely appropriate to tell you honestly the needs that we have and to ask you to make a compensatory investment in the victim, the host of this show.
The point was made by the other caller, and I responded that we would be in conversation about that.
And I said to you, that's confusing. It is no commitment whatsoever. You can either say, yes, I will definitely, or no, I won't. I don't care if you said yes, I'll even give him $1. That's a commitment.
Well, I made a commitment to continue the conversation. The result
She didn't ask you to make a commitment to continue the conversation. She asked you to assist in getting him the MacBook Pro. She wasn't asking you to commit to a conversation, sir.
Well, that's the way that I would do it with him, in the same way.
Just so we're clear and not confused that those are two different things.
That what are two different things?
A commitment to a conversation as opposed to a commitment to actually doing something to get that computer.
Well, the conversation leads to getting the computer. In the same way that what we did on the day after Thanksgiving, there was a process involved. There was a process that involved building trust between the parties involved. And that's what I'm proposing. And the way to do that, well, no, I didn't interrupt you. The way to do that is to begin with having a conversation. The first time I spoke to Gus was this afternoon. So we can't. There are 1,000, 100,000, 1 million causes out there that are working towards the goal of Gus's show and towards replacing racism with justice. There are thousands of those causes. All I'm looking to do at this point, and again, as the work that we've done, if you would go on our website and look at the specific work that we've done, indicates we're very much into concrete solutions to making a change in the world. And what I'm proposing to Gus is very simple. Now that I'm aware of this need that he has, let's talk about it. And Gus, I'd like you to weigh in. Does that sound unreasonable, unfair, racist? What does that sound to you?
It could be all of the above, reasonable, fair, and racist. And I say that because it does sound reasonable to say I would like to have a conversation about investing in a program, white or non-white, investing in someone. I'd also say it sounds like this could be racism, to say it is inappropriate for a non-white person, victim of white supremacy, to make a request of a white person to get something that they need. I don't see anything inappropriate about that. Now, you said that it was in the context of you being asked as a guest on a program to be asked publicly in the middle of that program. People have needs that are important, and the person is able to ask that white person for resources that they need. I don't see anything inappropriate about that at all. You have to explain to me what is inappropriate about a victim of white supremacy asking a white person to meet a request for a specific need. I don't understand.
He wasn't asking me to meet a request. He was asking me to make a commitment. Those are two different things. And I dare say that if I invited you over to my house for dinner and then had television cameras here and then demanded that there would be that you would pay me for the dinner, or that you would then give me some kind of gift in return, I would think that would be inhospitable and inappropriate. That's what I would.
Okay, hang on. Okay, that's why I'm saying I believe this could be a bit of all three. It could be reasonable, fair, and racist. Now, you just used the term demand. I don't believe anyone here made a demand of you, Reverend Chase. It is my view. Wait a minute, you're interrupting. Okay. I don't believe anyone here made a demand. Now, I haven't seen any of these people. I believe this person, just judging from the voice he has called before, I believe this person is non-white. He said when he's called before, he's non-white, a victim of white supremacy. I believe the previous caller, the female at least, she's called before. She has said she's a non-white person, although there is a dispute about whether she's non-white, so I don't know. But she said she was non-white. victim of white supremacy. It is my view that no non-white person is in position to demand anything from a white person. So no demand has been made here. My view is that requests have been made. I do not see anything inappropriate about a request being made. And the metaphor that you used about you inviting me to your home for dinner and then setting up cameras and demanding a gift, I feel that that is extremely inaccurate to compare that to this, to making a request that you come on a public program to talk about racism, white supremacy, and then having a victim of racism make a request that happens to be during the course of that broadcast. I do not feel those are comparable at all, and especially your use of the term demand, because I don't feel anyone here has made a demand.
Okay. We might agree to disagree on this, but the caller did ask for me to make a commitment to make a payment to you, or a gift to you, or a grant to you, and I took that as a demand. I would also say, though, in terms of it could be 2 out of 3, fair, reasonable, and racist. For me to accede to that request or make that commitment could also be racist in all kinds of ways, and you know that because.
Wait a minute. Now you've made an assumption about me. That is incorrect.
I didn't.
You said you know that. You said you know that. That implies something about me. That is very incorrect. That is very incorrect. I'm going to further say wait a minute. This is important to say that it's racist for you to grant a request to a non-white person is racist. That does not even compute to me. We need to stop this right now. Can you please share with us what you mean when you say racist?
Because that would be patronizing. That could be a way.
Wait a minute. You're not answering the question. I don't want an explanation for why that would be racist. I want you to explain what you mean when you say racist.
I am, because that could be in giving that grant could be that doesn't clarify whether or not the act is racist or not racist.
You still have not explained what you mean when you use the term racist. And this is the third highlight for the non-white listeners. This is what you need to do when you speak with white people, particularly when they make an accusation about saying this could be racist or you as a non-white person could be racist. The conversation should come to a screeching halt until they explain what they mean when they say racist, and you still haven't done that. You are still explaining.
Gus, you misunderstood. Gus,
explain what you mean when you say racist.
Because I give you a gift or a grant, does not, in my mind, and it's me I'm talking about, not you, in my mind, does not in any way say whether or not I am racist. That does not, and that's what you've been saying for the past couple hours. Because of it could be good intentions, it could be a way to get rid of you, it could be a way to be dismissive of you, whereas in a conversation, which is where I was going with what I hope the process that we have after our call today, in that conversation, we might together discover all kinds of additional ways that we can address racism or that we can address your needs in particular. That's what I'm talking about. That's what the conversation leads to. That's what Intersections is all about. Let's have a process here whereby we don't call each other names. We don't make assumptions about one another because of a category or a class or a race or whatever, a group of people, but that we talk one-on-one, granted, recognizing that we come from different racial backgrounds, and that prompts different perspectives on the way we relate and react within society. But if we have that conversation one-on-one, we might be able to discover in that conversation that there are all kinds of solutions which are far more lasting, which address systemic racism in a far more comprehensive way, in a way that make the change, the concrete change that you've, on a number of occasions throughout this conversation, that you've indicated is the key to whether or not we are really trying to replace racism with justice, that through that kind of conversation, through that kind of process, those things might emerge. And that's what I'm seeking. That's what I'm seeking. That's my motivation. And that's why I think to make such a commitment in the process of this particular call short circuits that process. And that if we let that process flow, you don't know me either. And so you don't know that if I say that I'm going to do that, that there will be a process that will emerge. And my hope would be that out of that process, good things would come. Concrete, real things that would, in fact, assist the goal that you have in doing this show, which is, as I understand and believe it to be, thoughtful, respectful conversation about how we replace racism with justice.
Okay. I want to, again, point out for our listeners, racism, what you mean when you use the term racist, was never explained. Now, this has been recorded, so people can go back, they can listen to it. I'm making a flat statement. I asked repeatedly for him to explain what he meant when he said racist, and he never did so. My own view, if Reverend Robert Chase, if I had a MacBook Pro in front of me right now with a bow on it from Reverend Robert Chase, I would still say I strongly suspect he's racist. That does not take him off the suspected racist list at all. I would acknowledge I did get constructive help. This has improved my quality of life. Yay. However, and I would say that would be a much better example for me than pointing to a non-white person in a sexual relationship with a white person where we say, well, now her white family is okay with that. I think that would be much better. If those Lenape people, if they could get the broadband, I would say that's a much better example than the white person with the non-white person in a sexual relationship. But that is my view. But again, even if I did get the computer, yes, Reverend Robert Chase, I would still suspect he could and most likely is a racist white supremacist, even if I did get the computer. But I do see the validity in wanting to have dialogue around it, and perhaps there are other things, more important things, that you all at Intersections International could do to help replace white supremacy with justice, and me, a victim of white supremacy, in solving my problems. That could happen. I will be in touch. I did want to catch, because two other folks called in to make sure I did not miss any callers. There's another person, different person at 111. Are you there? The other 111?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, no, I was just listening.
Oh, okay. No problem. And let's see, 803. I don't know if this is the same person. 803, are you there with a question for Reverend Chase?
Oh, actually, this is Thomas just listening in. Like I said, the compensatory investment request was definitely well-deserved, and we appreciate the fact that he at least will acknowledge it and have that conversation with you, Gus.
Oh, right on. Thank you, 803.
Thank you, Thomas.
619. 619. Do you have a question for Reverend Chase?
Yes, just very quickly. Actually, it's not a question. It is simply a suggestion, and I could be incorrect. If everyone agrees that white supremacy and justice cannot exist in the same universe, that perhaps in this particular instance it would be more constructive to focus in on the production of justice. And I guess it is a question, if Reverend Chase agrees that an appropriate definition of justice is that no one is mistreated for any reason, and that the person who persons who need the most help receive it, if he agrees with that, then it seems that the conversation can take place about you getting what you need in terms of being able to continue the show past August with us, and that perhaps in this instance having an agreement on the definition of racism might be counterproductive, but I could be incorrect. But I guess the question for Reverend Chase is whether or not he concurs with that as being a question for justice, that no one is mistreated for any reason, and that the persons who need the most help receive it.
I can sure agree with that. There's no question about that.
Okay. Well, that was all that I had. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Groovy. I guess in the last minute, one other suggestion I would make. Farrell Winfrey, she is a white female. She's a member of the Caucasians United for Reparations. Been on this program 3 times. And she has said she is a Christian, devout Christian. She does the work that she does because that's what Christians are supposed to do. That's what she said. She's also an admitted racist. She said that she feels that the worst thing white people have done against non-white people is through Christianity making Jesus white. She feels that that is the worst thing that white people, racist white supremacists, have done to non-white people, and the way they have misused Christianity to practice racism, white supremacy. Do you feel that's true? And do you speak honestly about the way Christianity has been used to mistreat non-white people?
Are you talking to me, Gus? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I think that Christianity has made many mistakes in the way it's been practiced. And I don't know that I'd want to categorize one as the worst as opposed to others, but there have been certainly mistakes in the way Christianity has been practiced, both in this country and around the world. And so I think we need to work towards looking at the core message of Jesus, which is justice and compassion for all people, irrespective of race, gender, sexual orientation, age, status in life, class, and that's core to what I believe.
You did say you feel that, or actually, do you speak honestly? I want to make sure I got that. Do you speak honestly about the way Christianity has been used to support racism, white supremacy?
I always try to speak honestly.
About the way white people who practice racism, white supremacy have used Christianity to further support and expand racism, white supremacy. Do you speak honestly about that?
I think Christianity has been used that way. I agree with that.
Okay. Right, but do you speak about, that's the question, do you speak about
Oh, yes, of course, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Both in sermons and in public forums.
Okay.
Okay? All right, well, I hear we're off the air, so thank you for this invitation.
Thank you for taking some of your time to speak with us. I guess I will be in touch on Monday to see about the MacBook Pro.
I look forward to it.
For sure. Thank you, Reverend Chase.
All right. Thanks, Gus. Take care now.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Yes, sir. We are going to take a commercial, and I will wrap up after we get back from the commercial break. Hang tight, everybody.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity. Using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
C.O.W.S, Gus T Renegade. Someone in the chat room said the gist of the show was about getting a laptop, DSL, and phone line for the host. That is inaccurate. I think that came up during the caller portion of the show. That was in the bottom half of the hour. That did take up a significant amount of time during the second half of the show, but that was not the gist of the program. I think if you listen to the first 70 minutes, there is nothing mentioned about getting the host anything. We were talking about what Reverend Chase does with Intersections International, racism, white supremacy, and other aspects of white supremacy. We were not talking about getting Gus T Renegade anything. And again, people who called into the program made that request, not me. And I think even during the second hour of the program, we talked about other things as well. So that is inaccurate. Please listen to the entire program before you make a comment about what the gist of the program was about. My switchboard went down, but everybody who called in, you are on the line if you called in. So I can't take anybody off, but everybody who called in, you're on. Did anybody have any comments or questions about today's program?
Well, yes, it's Thomas. How you doing, Gus?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Wow, it was very, very interesting towards the end. He became about as comfortable as a harlot in church towards the end, and he was very abrupt in his ending to the conversation and very dismissive towards the end when he basically acted like he didn't hear your question and asked, were you speaking to him? And in fact, said, oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah, sure, I sure do. So he could get off the phone. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but it was very interesting towards the end.
Do you have any, or I guess anybody else that's on the line, did you have any thoughts about that comment or anything else that you heard from Reverend Chase?
I could see that. I could also see that.
Yeah, he was really, really anxious to end his stay here on the show, and basically, when it got to the point where he was, I feel like he was being accosted by several non-white people at once for a compensatory investment request, he therefore decided it's time to stage exit left and have a nice day, and did not want to engage further.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh. Well, I think with white people who quote unquote help non-white people, they're not used to non-white people asking them for stuff. If that makes any sense, like putting them on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So when it happens, they don't know how to handle it, because I think they're kind of used to that praise they get from non-white people, kind of like the Tim Wise situation. But he's used to that praise, and anybody that questions him, like, he gets a little upset with that. Like, how dare this not white person question me, and, and his the way he does things. So I think that might have something to do with it, that, when white people, quote-unquote, help non-white people, they tend to get real comfortable and with us not being mad at them. So I think that might have something to do with it, his response.
I agree with Mr. Thomas's with his thoughts about the abruptness of his answers at the end, not really answering the question, like he really was ready to get out of here. Which is fine.
Yeah, he was definitely ready to get out of there. That was evident.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I would much rather have white people behave in that manner in front of non-white people so there's no confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you all checked the website, but the website for Intersections International has a picture of Reverend Chase and I guess the other board members or whoever with this organization, and there's a non-white person there, and it's just exactly what he said, multiracial, put that in quotes, diversity, put that in quotes, and they're together, like this is something working against racism. And yeah, you can evaluate from yourself based on what he had to say on this particular program. I definitely want to make sure that people do not miss. He never explained what he meant when he said racist. And I know I asked at least 3 times. He never explained. What he did was continue to move towards, well, it would be racist because, or talking about the specific act that he labeled as racist. But he never explained what he meant when he used the term racist. That's critical, and I suspect that if you're in a conversation with a white person, and unfortunately a lot of non-white people, and you ask them, please explain what you mean when you say racist, you will get the same result. You will see a lot of people who really work hard to not define or explain what they mean when they use specific terms. Yeah. Did anybody else have additional thoughts or comments on the broadcast?
Yes. Well, my additional comment is exactly what you just said. It was extremely confusing, as usual. Same old, for me to hear him simply say, we can have a conversation. I'm like, well, 619 just had a conversation with you. I just had a conversation with you about MacBook Pro. We just had a conversation. I'm still extremely confused about what you are going to do. I'm particularly even more confused since as I hear all the time, that white people are so interested in improving the quality of life, or as he said, giving a glimmer that life can be better, giving that glimmer. I'm like, well, did he mean that? Do you really, really mean that? Okay. Can you, and let me be clear about that, I did ask, can he make an actual commitment to doing that? Can he? I didn't say make the commitment. I said, can you make an actual commitment? As far as I'm concerned, I'm not in confusion whatsoever about what he's going to do. If he happens to do something, it wouldn't surprise me. It would confuse me a bit more as to what his motives are for doing it.
What does trust have to do with buying a computer? I don't understand that. I'm like, okay, someone explain that to me.
Particularly.
What does trust have to do with buying a computer? I mean, if someone, I don't know. This is weird.
It's laughable. It's because number one, it had absolutely no substance to it whatsoever. It was just a great way to glad hand everyone on the phone to make us think that there was a potential for something to happen. But it's also laughable that it would sound like what he was trying to say, no matter how inartful it was that, he's going to be able to solve many other problems when we've already told you what the need is and simply for you to satisfy it. That's the problem, and I think therein lies the problem with many white people, is that they think that they can solve all the problems when you're asked for a specific request. I mean, the request was simply for a MacBook Pro. Either the answer is going to be yes, I will supply that MacBook Pro, or no, I will not be supplying that MacBook Pro. Simple, plain.
And we wouldn't be confused.
Exactly.
Or wasting time.
Yes.
I am really not feeling the chat room. I told y'all that before. I hate the chat room. I despise it. I do not see, I see like minuscule constructive value to the chat room. People just come and act crazy and just say all sorts of nutty things. Last program, ranting that Gus T Renegade is a coward for not sticking up for Cree, who called in for today's program. Shout out to Cree. Not sticking up for her and allowing her to be mistreated by Mr. Mark Crutcher, suspected racist. And today, speaking inaccurately about the program, saying it was all about getting a MacBook Pro for myself, which was not the gist of the program. I don't know, I might be closing the chat room completely for the program because it's plucked my nerves the last couple programs. But I will make sure I definitely say that again. The label is accurate to say Gus T Renegade is a coward if that means you allow or non-white people are mistreated in front of you. If that's what we mean when we say coward, then it would be accurate. I just want to make sure we don't have confusion about what racism, white supremacy means. There is no non-white person who can truthfully say non-white people are not mistreated in front of me. That doesn't happen. There is no non-white person who can say that truthfully. Now, if you can point that person out, we can end this show today, and we'll just go hang out with that non-white person. Does anyone on the line now, do you know a non-white person who can say, no non-white people are mistreated on my watch? Anyone here?
I certainly can't, and I'm always victimized and agitated. So if I seemed even particularly more agitated and victimized today, I just got sick seeing this movie Avatar, so perhaps that accounts for a little bit more of my agitation.
Oh, wow.
Anybody, we can end the cows today. The people who say this program is not constructive, we can end it today. If we know a non-white person that we can go to, no non-white people are mistreated in front of this particular non-white person, male, female, child, whatever. We will all go out and hang out with that person forever if we can come up with any non-white person who can truthfully say, no non-white people are mistreated in front of me. No one knows such an individual?
I can't say it, so.
Okay. Just want to be clear about that, because I felt that was, there were many instances of the confusion of non-white people on the last broadcast. I felt that was a blatant example of our confusion. There should never be a time where a non-white person is fussed at because a white person practices racism. That should never happen. If you're going to get angry about it, make sure you're angry at that white person for practicing racism. You should never be in a position where you're upset with a victim of racism because a white person practiced racism. That should never, ever happen. And non-white people condition us to focus on how people respond to racism as opposed to focusing on the racist. You don't look at non-white people and say, well, they didn't do the right thing when those white people were racist. I'm not going to fuss at their response to racism. If racism didn't exist, they wouldn't be responding in the first place. So make sure we're not fussing.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What exactly can a non-white person do? You know what I mean, when that happens. Because if a white, all the white person can say something, and then he has the power of the conversation. So a white person says something, and then the two non-white people can start fighting. So, yeah, what exactly can a non-white person do in that situation when they see a non-white person being mistreated? They can't really. I don't understand. I don't know. That's weird.
I don't think non-white people have come up with an answer for that yet because racism is still here. So apparently none of us knows what to do when you observe a white person practicing racism because we have not solved that. We have not answered that question yet. Now, with the context of what happened on the previous program, the person wasn't in front of me, so the most I could have done was to either cut him off. I did have the power to do that. I could have cut him off, or I could have said something. I did not cut him off because I felt it would be constructive to keep him on the line, and I did not interrupt him because I felt it would be best to have a live demonstration of a white person being rude and discourteous to a non-white person. I felt that would be a much better illustration of racism than to get into an argument and start yelling, fussing, cursing at the white person. Now, perhaps that's the correct thing to do. Maybe. I don't think so. I think it's much better if there's yelling and fussing, it's coming from the white person. Just from my experience, that is anomalous. That's not the normal thing that happens when there are discussions on racism, where the white person is fussing and loud and rude, and the non-white person is calm, quiet, just asking questions, normal tone. It's normally the other way around, where the white person is calm, the non-white people are, mad, angry, jumping up and down. So I think anytime you can reverse that, that's great, particularly if you can do it publicly so non-white people can observe that. So that was my thought process. I could be wrong. Maybe that's not the correct thing to do. But, again, underlying all of this, I am a victim of white supremacy. If we're going to be angry with someone for practicing racism, we should be angry at the white people.
Hello?
Yes, I was just
okay. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. I wanted to.
Yes.
I didn't want to be rambling.
I agree, and I think it's an example of what is in Cree's blog with the singer Nina Simone, I believe, and how it said she's punished for saying "ouch," just as when I was asking for the MacBook Pro, and then he tells me it's inappropriate to say ouch.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. And again, I hope this is constructive so that people will see the white people who allege to be against racism. You can judge how they respond on this program. It might be that I'm not doing the correct thing. I'm not asking the correct questions. I'm not speaking to them in the correct manner. That could be. I don't think I've said anything that's inaccurate. I don't think I've been discourteous in speaking to these white people. At the end of the day, I think these white people are interested in maintaining racism, white supremacy, and a lot of them have said as much. So, I hope it has been of some value to see these white people in just the way that they behave and talking about racism, white supremacy, and how to go about solving problems. Right on. I did definitely want to make sure that I let people know Dr. Joy Degree, formerly Joy Leary, she will be on the show tomorrow to talk about her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I've been reading it. Pretty good information. I think she might even be able to share some thoughts on the way that non-white people respond to one another in a very non-constructive manner because of our abuse that we suffered as victims of racism, white supremacy. That'll be tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, and 1 p.m. Pacific. Dr. Joy Degree, she will be here tomorrow on the Cows. And Tim Wise, I'm excited. Tim Wise will be here at the end of the month. That will be clowning his second trip to the Cows at Blog Talk Radio. I'm very much looking forward. I hope everybody can tune in live for that program and call, so he'll get lots of questions from very suspicious and slightly less confused non-white people. That would be fabulous. I think it's the 29th, January 29th, but I'm going to have it entered in the program very, very soon. So tell lots of people to tune into the broadcast. Tim Wise making his third trip to the Cows, which should say something right there. I've been very public in how I feel about Tim Wise, and he's coming back for a third time. I don't know what that means, but that is significant. I have to think about that. But I think that is very important, the fact that I called him on the program, the Elvis Presley of racism, and he's coming back again. So Tim Wise, January 29th. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Did anybody have anything else that they wanted to share this last program, before we get ready to wrap things up?
I had a question. Did he ask to come back to the show?
I asked him to come back. I actually wanted Tim Wise to come on the show for Christmas because he wrote an article some time ago about racism and Christmas, and a non-white person had been requesting that I do a program on the symbolism and racism in Christmas. And, I thought Tim Wise would be great, get a white person to talk about how racist Christmas is. And he said he didn't have time in his schedule, but he said January, and he threw out some dates. And I said, sure, I would love the opportunity to chat it up with Tim Wise again and let him know how I think he practices racism, see if I have refined my skills from the last time he was here. So I made the request.
Hello?
Should be Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Should be interesting. I guess I need to see Avatar and 2012 because I've heard quite a bit of folks talking about the racism in Avatar. I guess you had to take a minute before. I'm sorry.
What's the obvious racism in Avatar?
I didn't see it, but our caller, Mr. 720, he said he saw it and is a bit more agitated because of his viewing experience. I was going to see if he could share that before we wrap up. What exactly did you see in Avatar?
Oh, gosh, you know, when Mr. Nero had spoken of a movie, what was the movie? I don't know.
2012, I think it was.
2012, yes, and spoke about how racist that movie was. I don't think it even compares to Avatar. But the one thing that I do want to say, and I mean that, I don't think there's any comparison whatsoever. Everything that you speak about on this show, it's mind-boggling to me. You talk about confusion. But at any rate, when Reverend Chase had said something about to ignore the racial component, which was interesting to me, because he kept on saying racial as opposed to racist. That's, again, confusing. And also he said, and then we need to understand the other more, try and understand. Well, I'm thinking about Avatar, and I'm like, this is the most expensive movie ever made. You have all kinds of corporations and people donating to this movie to get it made. Why? And they're demonstrating clearly that they understand a whole lot about the so-called other. And ultimately, it seems that the only reason they want to do that is so that they can continue to dominate the other. And that's clearly demonstrated in this movie. Clear, there are no ifs, ands, or buts.
I gotta see that.
Oh, it is one, and to be the most expensive movie they've ever made, it is one of the most interesting movies I've seen. I was, and I will admit, I was a little sick after coming out of there.
Wow.
Well, it was on my list because, you know, I'm a nerd, but then I know that racism in it. I really want to see it. Has anyone seen The Princess and the Frog? I haven't watched the last couple. I haven't listened to the last couple shows, so I'm just wondering, has anyone seen that movie? Hello?
I haven't.
Huh?
I have not.
Okay.
Me either.
Yeah. So the prince is white.
Oh no, I have not.
Okay.
But I would suggest. I'm sorry. If anybody can see Avatar, I would suggest go see it because so many of the things that you speak about on this show, Renegade, they are in that movie clearly. The sex component, it's just.
Yeah, somebody. That's why I said, see, I'm closing the chat room. They pluck my nerves. This might be a white supremacy stress reaction, but somebody in the chat room said that the thing, if next year, will it be okay if I don't get an iPod? If I don't get an iPod phone, I'm quitting next year. Though I'm doing this to strong-arm someone for a computer or what have you. If you don't think the program is constructive, don't tune in. That's all you have to do. And in fact, I'll help you. You can tell people, don't get them a MacBook Pro. I don't think that's correct. I don't think it's logical. I don't think it should be done. That's what you can do, is go out and make sure I don't get a MacBook Pro. However, we've done 70 programs here. I have not been compensated at all for 70 programs with the roster of people that you think, that I think, have constructive things to share or demonstrate about racism, white supremacy. If you don't think it's constructive, don't tune in to the broadcast. Real simple. If you feel like I'm strong-arming someone to get a MacBook Pro, fine. Don't tune in to the broadcast. What I'm saying and doing might be incorrect. So don't even worry about it. Don't tune in. Thank you. I will continue to say, though, if I don't have that MacBook Pro by August 5th, this show is ending, period. However you feel about it, that's fine. I know I am not losing any sleep over it at all. If August 5th comes and it's not here, not concerned at all. I'll tune into Cree's program or whoever else if someone wants to start it up. Fine. This is not going to bother me at all, one way or another. And as I said, they plucked my nerves in the chat room. I'm not opening it anymore. If anybody thought it was constructive, sorry. It has not been constructive for the last two programs I've just seen.
Was that a white person or a non-white person?
I have no idea, which adds to the confusion because you don't really know if it's a white person doing it or a non-white person doing it. So, yeah, I'm not really interested in wading through the foolishness in the chat room to pick out a question. And I didn't even really see constructive questions today. Someone said, what does the person mean when he says racist? I thought of that. I don't know if they heard me say it, but I thought of that. I didn't see questions in the chat room that were posed to him. I just saw a lot of riffraff about a laptop in the chat room today. In the previous program, I saw a lot of riffraff about non-white people being informed about Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger, which I would strongly assert is not true, and riffraff about me not defending Cree. And I've already shared my view on that. In addition to how I felt before, I mean, this is not a new thing. I've talked about the non-constructive value of the chat room quite a bit. So, yeah, I'm not even devoting any more time to that. Avatar, I need to see it. 2012, I also need to see it. And Princess, the Frog Princess, I need to see all three of those. I have heard lots of commentary about the racism in all of those films. And why I've consistently said I think movies, that's an excellent tool to share information about racism, white supremacy, because lots of people go to the movies. A lot more people will be willing to watch one of those films as opposed to reading a book by one of the people that's been on this show. And you can just, tell them 2 or 3 things that you saw. Like 720, he could share 2 or 3 things that he saw. Pay attention to this when you watch the film. You go, you watch it. Oh, I did see that. I've seen consistently where that's real effective with non-white people with films. Perhaps if the show ends in August, I can do more film reviews. I have quite a few on my blog. I can do more because there are a lot of movies where I see tons of racism. That seems to be one of white people's most refined ways of practicing racism, to make films to just load them up with racism and white supremacy. So check those films out. Support Back of the Bus's blog, nonwhitealliance.wordpress.com, nonwhitealliance.wordpress.com. Support my blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. I thought Cree was incorrect earlier when she said the C.O.W.S was the #1 educational program at Blog Talk Radio. When I checked last, it was #2, but I checked, and it is #1 again. So really, that's all I have to say to anybody. #1 educational program at Blog Talk Radio with no computer, no phone. If you're a non-white person and you don't like this effort, do your own show. If you're a white person, you're probably racist, so whatever. Gus T Renegade, and I'm not doing the chat room anymore. Keep your comments to yourself. Thank you. And more importantly, do your own show. Don't sit around and hate on a victim. Go do your own show. That's one thing. That'll be another suggestion. If you're a non-white victim of white supremacy, that's one thing you can do to work against racism. Do not criticize other non-white people. That's not constructive to sit around and criticize victims. The people that need to be criticized most are white people. There should be a lot more that Reverend Chase did today that you can pick out flaws in than what Gus did today, especially since he is a white person and admitted he's been conditioned to be racist and can't say that he's not a racist. All of the criticism should be going to those people, not Gus or any other non-white person, Cree, Back of the Bus, Mr. Fuller, Dr. Welsing. No criticism should be going against a non-white person that is working to replace white supremacy with justice. They are responding to something that they shouldn't be experiencing in the first place, and I think everybody on the call can say that. We shouldn't be facing racism at all. We shouldn't be trying to deal with this at all. If you don't think this is constructive, do your own show. Blog Talk is free. Shoot me an email. I'll show you how to set up an account and give you some tips if you wanted about how you can promote and get people to listen to your program or what have you. But until then, #1 program, educational, Blog Talk Radio, no phone, no computer. I'll just let my record ride on that. Gus T Renegade, Context of White Supremacy, will be back tomorrow. Dr. Joy Degree, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. She'll be here 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Thank you, everybody, for calling in. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we end the program?
I support the... Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Oh, I support the cause in the chat room, too, because, I seen the day, and I was like, wow. Because I haven't been listening to a couple of shows lately, been including live shows, so I came back, and I seen the chat room. I'm like, well, if he closes it, I understand now, because I was for the chat room. Now I'm not, because there's a lot of confusion, and it's not even appropriate. So that's my only comment.
And I just wanted to say to you, Renegade, I don't have words to thank you for your show. Whenever I'm able to get to a computer, I'm literally jonesing, waiting for the next show. So in terms of its constructive value, there's nothing anybody can say to me that's negative or anything like that in terms of your show. It is absolutely the most constructive show, and as far as I'm concerned, the help that it gives me, it's second to none. Mm-hmm. So that's what I have to say. It is second to none. What you are doing is absolutely tremendous, and I don't care how you put it, Renegade. As far as I'm concerned, you are doing something.
I definitely appreciate the feedback. I hope it has been of some constructive value, and it might not have been. I make sure I always say that. It might not be. So, if you don't feel it is, no problem. But I definitely, like I said, would not encourage criticizing other non-whites. I do thank you all for consistently checking in on the program and calling to ask questions of the folks who stop through. Definitely appreciate it when you have live callers. And I'm glad you feel it has been of some value. Not wasting our time here, I hope. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow. I will hopefully get an opportunity to check out some of those films and perhaps share a thought or two down the road on some of those. Maybe I can even get Dr. Kevorkian and Mr. Patterson to come back and chat about 2012 and Avatar and some of the Frog Princess or whatever, to talk about that, because I think those are big films. A lot of people are watching those. They're holiday films, so I know a lot of people have seen at least one, if not all three of them. Maybe we can incorporate that into a program down the road. I think that will do it for today. Oh, I'm sorry.
Have you seen Precious and that other one, The Blind Side? Have you seen that one, Precious? I haven't seen them either. I don't think I can handle it. Honestly,
I want to check them out.
I've seen them both, and in my opinion, neither of them compare to Avatar. Please go see
Avatar. Wow. Wow. Like, even in the little clips for Precious, I just can't stand it. But you said that, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Please go see Avatar. I would love to know what everyone has to say about that.
Okay.
I will. It's on the list. I'll have to check out all 5 of those, Blindside and Precious. I think Dr. Welsing, she had pretty interesting comments for Blindside and Precious when she was on the show last month. But I need to check out all of those and perhaps do some counter-racist film reviews, or at least do a program discussing those in depth. As soon as I get them watched, we'll see if we can pull that off. I think that will do it for today. I will go back to my reading to prepare for tomorrow's program. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, sharing some of your Saturday with the cows. We will be back tomorrow. And, hopefully you will have some constructive efforts at replacing white supremacy with justice. In the meantime, we will be in touch. Thank you for supporting the cows. We'll be back tomorrow. Gus T Renegade signing out.